All right, YouTube, this is Detroit's HPTV coming to you out of Detroit, back with another video. We're going to approach an interesting and controversial topic this morning. And what I want you to do is think about what you're about to hear, but don't get an emotional reaction to it. Just analyze the situation. We're going to talk about a conversation between Jason Whitlock and Vincent Ellison Everett. Now, it's dealing with Martin Luther King and his legacy and what his legacy really and truly is. Because you see everybody from Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris and every other Democrat since the 70s has always came to black people in the black church, standing on Martin Luther King, quoting Martin Luther King, and using his legacy as a tool to get black people to support the Democratic Party. But what they leave out is how did Martin Luther King ever get associated with the Democratic Party when his father and grandfathers were Republican. The first black politicians in this country were Republicans. And the reason that is because the Democrats and the Dixiecrats fought to uphold slavery. They created Jim Crow. And they also created the Ku Klux Klan at a time when Martin Luther King was a kid and growing up. And Martin Luther King knew this. He knew that the Democrats and the Dixiecrats and the liberals were the ones who upheld slavery. He knew these things. So how would his legacy be attached to the Democratic Party, who had been the enemies of his father, the church he was raised in, and terrorized the actual city he grew up in? See, I don't know if you've ever heard of COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program under J. Edgar Hoover. Under J. Edgar Hoover, they spied and surveilled every civil rights leader, every pastor, constantly. The surveillance of Martin Luther King was approved by John F. Kennedy and the Kennedys, who portrayed themselves as his friend and a friend of black people. So why would they allow J. Edgar Hoover to surveil and spy on a man that they were publicly embracing? When you look at the Democratic Party today and their attachment to Hollywood and other celebrities and how they come out in defense of the Democratic Party, it's a mystery how they could come out and support a party who has historically always went against the interest of their communities. Blackmail runs rampant in politics. They use blackmail to manipulate people, to compromise their integrity so that they will not speak boldly against them. And toward the end of Martin Luther King's life, he said the biggest threat to the black community was the liberals. He said that. But when you look and you actually read the COINTELPRO, J. Edgar Hoover surveilled everyone. He even referred to Malcolm X as the monk. He referred to Malcolm X as the monk because Malcolm was disciplined. He ate one meal a day. He didn't cheat on his wife. His conviction and his integrity was strong. But they called Martin Luther King the Tomcat because they had surveilled him to such a degree that they had recorded every indiscretion that he had. And they used it to such a degree because they was trying to make Martin Luther King suicidal. So when you see a Joe Biden goes to his alma mater college and speak and still using victimhood and oppression as a tool to manipulate the emotions of those young black men at that school, you don't really see what's behind that. You don't see what's behind Hillary Clinton quoting him and saying she's no ways tired, and Kamala Harris and every other Democratic politician quotes King. But what is his real legacy as it relates to the Democratic Party? Seeing how they were surveilling him, and they caught all his discretions, and they attempted to blackmail him, and they took control over the movement he had. See, Malcolm X was closer to the grassroots men, the street men. Martin Luther King united the church with the Southern Christian Baptist Leadership Conference. So Martin Luther King controlled the church. And you see today with the Jamal Bryants and the T.D. Jakes, and how you can see Fannie Willis and all kind of politicians come up in the black church. It wasn't always like that. It started with King. Before King, you seen no politicians who could take the pulpit of a black church and talk politics. So even to this day, you see there's about to be a civil war within the black church, because you have pastors who will stand with the Democrats even though the agenda is gender reassignment of children, LGBTQ, open borders, termination of pregnancy. How did the Democrats get this stranglehold on the black church? It started with King. So don't take an emotional approach to what you finna hear. Listen to the discussion, and we're gonna elaborate more. This is for fair use under the 1976 Copyright Act, for education, commentary, and the First Amendment. Listen to this.
All right, I want to get to your documentary. I watched it this morning. I want to play for you. Guys, don't we have the trailer? I want to play the trailer. It's about 2 minutes. It's one of the most powerful things I've ever seen. And it's a great summation or a great representation, obviously, of the documentary. We do have, let's...
Organization in the history of the world. Since their inception in 1800, they've been the party of slavery. Then, after slavery, they became the party of...
That trailer a dozen times. And each time you do that third look at what they've done to us, I get chills and tears well up in my eyes, and because I get emotional. It does trigger me.
Now, I'm going to interject right here, because he said it gets emotional and it's triggering, because they're talking about the history of the Democratic Party, the Dixiecrats. They upheld slavery. Think about this. They fought the Republicans and Abraham Lincoln to uphold slavery. Then after that, they created the Ku Klux Klan to terrorize their ex-slaves. Then when they couldn't do any more, they created Jim Crow. So how did the black community become so united with the Democrats? It came through the door of King, a man that John F. Kennedy and his brother allowed J. Edgar Hoover to surveil 24 hours a day. They caught every discretion, and they attempted to blackmail him and control him. And they usurped the entire civil rights movement through King. Listen why and how.
Vince, I think, and having watched the documentary, the full thing this morning, I feel like the things you're arguing, everybody knows is true, but people are reluctant to admit a mistake, that they've been slaves to the Democrat Party, and it's been a mistake, but people don't like to admit mistakes. They just don't. And then part two is you're so bold with it and you're so just committed to truth that you went after the sacred cow, MLK. And that makes people reluctant because he's an idol that they worship, and they don't want to let that go either. Their thoughts and affinity for MLK is too difficult, or they're struggling with that level of truth and boldness. But I think, again, I think most people know what you're arguing is true. They don't want to admit it, and the going after the MLK. But I almost think it's necessary in order for us to walk back from the 1964 Civil Rights Act. We're going to have to deal with the truth about what MLK's true legacy is and what he actually put into place.
And I want to say this and interject since he mentioned the 1964 Civil Rights Act. That was legislation that the Republican Party forced the Democrats to adopt. And after signing it, LBJ said that after signing this, he would keep the Negroes voting Democrat for the next 200 years by signing that act and taking control and taking the helm of the civil rights movement through MLK. Listen to Simone.
We have to deal with that. It's painful, but we have to deal with that.
Yeah, Jason, it was difficult for me. Like you brought up in the household. You probably had a Martin Luther King picture hanging up in your living room in your house, like just like me. You heard me say inside my documentary, I had an Aunt Jenny. She was much older than I was. She's almost in her 80s, and she lived in an old house with a wood heater and no running water. And she had two pictures in her house, and one was Martin Luther King Jr. He's an icon in my house. And I kept trying to find a way around all the stuff I was hearing and all the stuff that I was reading and all the things that were happening. But as I said in my documentary, it was like what happened between Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. When C.S. Lewis was an atheist, and Tolkien finally told him that Jesus had to be a maniac, crazy, and insane. He was exactly what he said he was. And so I had to look at what was being said about King. I said, I read Ralph, his best friend's book. It was Ralph Abernathy. The walls came tumbling down and said that the night before he did the mountaintop speech, he slept with two women and beat up and beat up another one at the Lorraine Motel. So he beat her up, slept with two other women. I read the book by Parting the Water of American the King years by his name is Taylor Brandt. She was a Yale graduate, Pulitzer Prize winner, Bill Clinton's roommate at Yale. I read Bearing the Cross by Garrow, who was a scholar of Martin Luther King Jr. His book won a Pulitzer Prize. I read the Jackie O book, where she said that Martin Luther King was a horrible, terrible person. Read the FBI files. I just got through reading Jonathan Eaves' book on King that came out this year. And all of them say the same thing. And I have to say, is everybody lying on him? Or is he what they say he was? And they were saying, not me. I was 4 years old when he died. I never met him. I'm going by something that these Democrats wrote. And these were conservatives writing these books. Jason, these were Democrats, very liberal Democrats writing this stuff about King. And I'm saying if everything they said about this man is true, 45 girlfriends, orgies, gay sex, drinking, drunk, outside children. I mean, this guy was more like Rasputin than Jesus Christ. And again, this is not me writing it. This is socialists and Democrats and We Shall Overcome writing this stuff. And so as I started reading it, and then, I was going to the Lorraine Motel to just keep my studies up about King. And they were playing the I Have a Dream speech, and it was looping at the Lorraine Motel. And my wife said, come on, Vince, we got to go. I watched it 2 times because King really rocks his speech, right? And then I heard King say something in his speech I heard him say 1,000 times. The old Thomas Wolfe line, right? You hear a thing 1,000 times before you see it once. And I heard him say something that I said, this is the poison pill. I just read John Locke's book 2 weeks earlier, the Second Treatise of Government, where he was talking about freedom being an unalienable right, that it was irrevocable, non-transferable, and unsellable. And so this is still fresh in my mind. And I heard Dr. King say in his I Have a Dream speech, because I was wondering why Kaepernick was kneeling and all these NFL players were kneeling, why everybody was mad, Black Lives Matter blowing up stuff, fighting. And I heard King say this. He said, 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, the Negro is still not free.
Want to earn cryptocurrency? Try Coinbase. Coinbase simplifies.
And I said, that was it. That's the poison pill. Because like I said, that was a lie because I was born free. My freedom is a gift from God. Like John Locke said, it's irrevocable, non-transferable, and unsalvageable. It's an unalienable right. And Thomas Jefferson said that these unalienable rights, the unalienable right to freedom is a right that we use to tell King George, you are not sovereign over us. God is sovereign over us. Our rights come from God. They do not come from government. And King said we're coming to government to guarantee our unalienable rights. And that's a lie. These rights come from God. He said 5 times in that speech that we were not free. And that's why Black Lives Matter, Kaepernick, all these young black people now are always marching and fighting and raising hell in the street because they think that government can give them their freedom. Ask them if they're free. No, I'm not free. So then King said, when will we be satisfied? He said, we will never be satisfied. Not until justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. That's a fancy way of saying never. Jesus Christ said, my peace I leave with you. If you keep your mind on me, I'll keep you in perfect peace. And King is saying that unless the white man does this or that for us, we will never ever have peace. It's an unchristian concept where you let another man control your peace. Even in that great statement where all of us talk, all of us recite when he said, I have a dream that one day I will not be judged by the color of my skin, but by the content of my 4 little children will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Well, there's things wrong with that. Because number one, ain't nothing wrong with the color of my skin. God made me black, and he said he made me beautiful. And I'm not going to be apologizing for it.
Now think about this. This is almost 60 years later, and your leaders, or so-called leaders, still get in front of you and tell you you're fighting for freedom. You're fighting for justice. You're fighting for equality. And then they tell you, the conservatives, they're going to put you back in chains. You're going to be picking cotton. This is fear-mongering. This is an old tactic since the Democratic Party co-opted the black church and co-opted the civil rights movement and corrupted your celebrities and your icons, blackmailed them and put them in front of you to lead you astray and to keep you tied to them by telling you you're not free. I know you kind of think, man, Martin Luther King, he's this and he's that. But they built him up to be that and put him out in front of you. They do the same thing today. They put and pick the leadership that you follow. If the Democratic Party, who's always been the party of slavery, Jim Crow, and the Ku Klux Klan, if they pick your leaders and tie you to them, they're taking your freedom. Look at all this division coming up in the holidays. You got Joy Reid saying, if your family members voted for Trump, don't go to Thanksgiving dinner with them. You got all these people coming out saying that Donald Trump is going to do this and do that, and they fearmonger you. And it started with King. And I know in our culture, he's an icon. But in the COINTELPRO, in the counterintelligence program, J. Edgar Hoover referred to him as a tomcat and Malcolm X as a monk. They caught his every discretion and recorded it and blackmailed him into embracing the Democratic Party when his father and his father's father were all Republicans. Read your history. History best rewards the researcher. Let's finish listening to this.
And running behind some white racist saying, sir, please look over the color of my skin, please. Not me, never me. And then he said that he was dreaming about a day that they wouldn't judge me by it, but my Christian faith tells me that I'm not the supposed to be concerned at all about how I'm viewed by man. I'm supposed to be concerned about how I'm viewed by God only, and then myself. If you hate me, that's your problem. I'm supposed to love you. If you do me wrong, I do you right. You cheat me, I do you right. But that don't mean that you have a right to put your hands on me. You don't take my love for weakness. If you hate me, that's your problem. You put your hands on me, you have another one. And if you do put your hands on me, I got two things that'll get you off me. That's Jesus and my 38. You better not try me. So he's walking around telling us that. And then he's and then he tells us on some certain day we'll be free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty we're free at last. Still telling us that we are not free. Now, I have a dream speech as I started researching, found out it was written by two communists. Clarence Jones, Stanley Levinson. Who was Stanley Levinson? Bayard Rustin, another communist, introduced Martin Luther King Jr. to Stanley Levinson, the #1 communist in America.
I'm showing you this because it's the same tactic to where you have in our community Democratic people actually demonizing and vilifying conservative people in the name of the Democratic Party with their history. And you may ask yourself, how did our community embrace the party of Jim Crow and the Ku Klux Klan? When you see these celebrities fleeing the country before the Epstein list, fleeing the country before the Diddy list are revealed to the public, you will see that this country has always used blackmail and coercion when it comes to minority leadership. The Democratic Party picks your leaders. If you listen to them all, they're still fear-mongering you. They're still telling you that they're going to put you back in chains and you're going to be picking cotton and the conservatives are going to do this. Because they're still slaves and still controlled by the Democratic Party. And it started when they co-opted the civil rights movement and they undermined the Southern Christian Baptist leadership through blackmail. Read the COINTELPRO and you can see how they surveilled the leadership back then, how they compromised them, how they would threaten them to hold them up with shame. This is the Democrats. John F. Kennedy authorized J. Edgar Hoover to do the surveillance and to record King. And since that time, you've been attached to that party. Is it true, like LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson said, that after he signed that bill, he would have the Negro voting Democrat for the next 200 years, even though he himself was a racist? Think about what you guys did. You guys voted for Jim Crow Joe Biden, who said that your kids were super predators and that if they went to school with white kids, they would turn it into jungles. How did you vote for this man that has so much disdain for you? Why are you falling out with your family members that voted conservative over these people in the Democratic Party? And why, even now, they're fear-mongering you? They were able to put an Indian woman who cosplayed as a black woman, even though you would not accept the fact that she was Indian until she ran for the presidency. You, on that side, turned against your own people to uphold the legacy of the Democratic Party, when their legacy has always been at the detriment of us. And it started when they compromised King and took control of the civil rights movement, when people were striving for social equality that they have been fighting ever since Jim Crow. They have been fighting it ever since the Republican Party under Abraham Lincoln initiated the Emancipation Proclamation and made you free. They took control of your mind and told you that you weren't free, and you embraced that ideology of victimhood and oppression, and they still use it today to keep you on the Democratic plantation. And you need to think about that when you interact with other people. You need to think about why you are so adamant and so controlled by a party that has never loved you. Think about that. And that's all I have on this subject right now. This Detroit's HPTV coming to you out of Detroit. Support the nonprofit, Detroit's Black Thought and Action Collective. Cash App is in the description. As always, salute to all patriots. Keep your head on a swivel and think. Like, share, and subscribe. Peace.